hope you're liking the Luncheon Learns because the whole point is to try and capture and fill the gap of the psychological, emotional aspect of weight loss surgery. And you guys need experts other than myself. So comment for me if you're loving these Luncheon Learns, if you get a lot of use from them. Megan Fettes is known as the Joy Coach. She coaches people, helps them give them tools to help them make breakthroughs. She's a yoga teacher and has incredible insight on body image. So let's talk about body image and abuse, right? And
Yes.
I actually I Googled domestic violence, the definition of domestic violence, and I
Ooh.
found some interesting things. I don't know if you know this, but apparently Obama's definition, and I'm not political, this is not a political thing, but he had, yes, he had a very deep definition of domestic violence that included input from a lot of national organizations, and it dealt with not just physical, sexual, but it also talked about power control. Like, for example, if a man keeps a woman from money and now she can't support herself, under Obama, that was a type of domestic violence. Trump apparently changed it without much fanfare. Yeah, exactly. And the definition is very short now. If you Google the .gov definition of it, Department of Justice.gov, it basically just says if it's a misdemeanor, it's some sort of felony or misdemeanor crime. He took out all the money, the power control definition of it. Anyway, that was really interesting. Yeah. Now, a lot of my following, the obesity population, they feel like there's a strong correlation between abuse and obesity. So how would you define abuse, Megan?
Yeah, so abuse is basically any form of control. So whether that be in a sexual sense, a physical sense, or money, right? So anything that's withdrawing control from an individual.
So how would that be verbally?
So verbally is often like making the person feel less than or degrading them. So it can show up as like the schoolyard bullying, right? Like telling somebody that they are fat, or telling that they don't like them, or that they're make fun of their parents, whatever it might be, but it's still taking away their feeling of control.
Or making them easier to control. And
yes.
In terms of a husband and wife, or right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's where often a lot of people get confused with that kind of abuse, is because we have been taught that the only forms of abuse are physical or sexual, but mental abuse is huge. And it really is that getting somebody to that, you're right, vulnerable or weakened state, so that they can be overpowered or controlled.
So I want to get right to the question that's most on my mind, which is this this notion that people put on weight as a form of protection against abuse. Do you believe in that, or do you believe that's a myth that's been perpetuated through the obesity world? What do you think?
I think that there definitely is a protection aspect involved. In the yogic world, we talk about our body never forgets, but our mind does. And we're actually developed that way on a psychological level, so that we can go through trauma, or we can go through abuse and still maintain our functionality as a human being. But the body doesn't forget. And so it actually has an intelligence of its own that will actually protect itself through weight, or it'll start to compensate through injury. So yes, definitely there is a correlation between weight gain and protection.
Yeah, so in scientific terms, we often refer to that as cellular memory.
Totally.
Yeah, cellular memory. So do you feel that there's a cellular memory component for abuse?
Yes, definitely. There's been a lot of research, and you're probably very much into this, is the fascial research that's been coming forward. And understanding how the fascial system works. And in yoga, we're doing a lot of like fascial release. So it's really gentle but really specific release into parts of the body to help alleviate those points of trauma. And
that sounds
so
pretty woo-woo.
I know, right? And so many people do believe that it's woo-woo, but it taps into more of that cellular memory versus just that physical component.
Okay, well, I'll play devil's advocate here, right?
Yeah.
So let's let's say that you do have this cellular component, that you have the cellular memory, you have this genetics, because people want to blame it on genetics. And let's say you've been sexually abused as a child, now you're verbally abused by your husband, right? But if I put your ass in a refugee camp where there's no food, you're not going to put on weight, and chances are you will lose weight.
Definitely. So there's different ways that people cope, right? I mean, when we have access to food, it's easier to cope with food because it's acceptable, it's understood, kind of, and we have access to it. And so it's almost like that stuffing of emotions. Instead of dealing with it, instead of acknowledging it, we'll eat and stuff the emotions away. But if you don't have access to it, you're going to find a different way of coping. So you're still doing the same pattern, but the appearance of it is different.
Okay. And that could be alcoholism, that could be sex addiction, that could be other things.
Definitely. It could be anger or abuse in its own way, right? Or just even, we can stuff our emotions by just simply becoming busy as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that act of eating.
You know, you bring up a good point, right? So I think that it could be, let's say, generational. So let's say a mom stuffs her emotions by overfeeding her kids.
Totally.
Which, if you look at it in population studies, we would blame that on genetics, but it's really not genetics as much as it is the mom just not having a great coping skills.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And we learn everything from our parents, right? So I think sometimes we deem it as genetics because maybe our parents might be overweight because they're stuffing their emotions through food. And then naturally the child is going to learn that coping mechanism as well because it's in front of them, they see it, and they don't know anything different. So they create those same patterns. It's like that whole like idea of we become our parents. Right? I mean, like, we've all done it. We've all said things that our parents have said, or we've all done things. Damn it! And so it happens, and definitely in the coping mechanism aspect.
So how does that affect body image? And in a couple of different scenarios. The first scenario is a woman who's in an abusive relationship. How does that affect her body image versus a woman who escaped the abusive relationship but still might have body image issues?
So when there's abuse involved, there naturally stimulates the subconscious mind, right? And I know we've done a lot of talking about that over these Luncheon Lurns, about the belief systems or the core limiting beliefs that we have in our subconscious mind. So on the abuse aspect, when a person's in the abuse, is still in the abusive relationship, they're going to be feeding into that subconscious mind because they're living through their external world and creating that as their reality. So it's kind of this constant feedback loop, reaffirming that negative core limiting belief about themselves because that's what they keep experiencing.
And is that they stay stuck in that relationship?
Yes, because then they don't know, there's like the neural pathways have ingrained into that same feedback loop. So they don't actually know any other way. They don't see any other way. So their perspective is truly blinded by what they're experiencing in the current state. And so they're not able to see themselves truly, and they create a negative self-image about themselves. They see themselves as unworthy, less than, because why would this be happening to them if it wasn't true? So it kind of goes back into that like victimist state or that martyr state of this is happening because. Where
there's a lot of like, maybe I deserve it. Do you think?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
So how do they break free from that?
So kind of going back, like you said, into this person who ends up gaining their power enough to leave that abusive relationship, that's huge, right? Because they're able to break out slightly of that cycle and choose something different. But they still have to work very intently on reprogramming how they see themselves. Because that's still going to be navigating and running through their mind. Those belief systems are going to be what they see. So they have to, once they leave, set the intention of healing, for lack of better terms, by being really intentional with their thought processes. So being really intentional with how they see themselves.
Can you share your personal story with us, Megan? Because I want my audience to understand that you're not just lecturing at them, but you went through this yourself. Do you mind sharing some of your personal story?
Absolutely. So when I was a little bit younger, I was in high school, and it was I call him my first love, right? Like, fell fast, hard for him. And the relationship started off amazing. And then it slowly progressed into the verbal abuse is where it started. It started off as being told constantly I was either not girly enough or I was too girly. I was dumb or I was too smart. And every chance that came up, there was that verbal abuse of how he perceived me. Then it slowly progressed into the sexual abuse aspect. And where it came into the sexual abuse aspect was not only was I sexually active with him, but then I felt so low. I felt like I had no control, like we talked about earlier, and almost forced to have intercourse, sexual activities with his friends. And then it progressed then finally into the physical abuse, where I was getting kicked. The last straw, actually, where I finally woke up was we were at a party. We were at a friend's house, and he had quite a bit to drink, and he started to kick me in the stomach, and friends started to walk up and see it. And he wound up to punch me in the face, and his friends grabbed him and hauled him out.
Wow.
And they finally were like, this went on for about 2 years, all of this abuse and everything. And they finally just looked at me and they're like, you need to choose something different because you two are toxic. This is not good. And so I did. But then I ended up landing in drug abuse myself. Right. So not necessarily the food addiction, but definitely the drug and alcohol stuffing and trying to run away from those emotions, those feelings of shame more so than anything.
If you don't mind talking about a little bit further, why do you think for you it was drugs and not food? Because food is obviously more available, easier access, less stigma against it.
Totally. So I grew up in a smaller town, and there was a lot of readily available drugs at the time. But more so, I think it was like I really, at that time, wanted to escape. Like, I wanted to escape all forms of reality. And so I chose drugs versus food.
But so what you said was interesting. In the obesity population, we talk about comfort food. And I always say, a lot of things that we think are treats are actually punishments. So when people think they're comforting themselves with food because they deserve it, it's a treat, they're actually punishing themselves. And at what point do we, how do we get people to realize it's really a punishment? Like, you weren't escaping reality, Like, Megan, drugs are not fixing your reality.
Totally.
Like, if I shook you at that point, I don't think you would be like, oh, Duc, you're totally right. I'm going to stop doing drugs.
No, because it took me quite a journey to get to that point. And it's funny that you say that, because I remember in that state of my journey, the next day I would I called it my hole. So I would not want to see anybody. My anxiety levels would be through the roof. I would have so much guilt, and I just would despise myself because it was a true punishment. It was that I went from going into that abusive relationship with somebody else to abusing myself. Right? Because even though I chose something different, I didn't know anything different. So it just created a different form of punishment. Right. So where it came down for me, more so than anything in the addiction realm, was And I know I state it like this because it truly was this way for me. But I woke up one day, like literally, I just woke up one day and I knew I had a choice. Like I felt like shit, didn't want to be where I was. I probably was going to die going down the same route that I was going.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Like I couldn't feel that way anymore. Like I was just moving through the motions to get through life.
I think a lot of my patients or people I deal with, they say the same things. They hit a wall, right? So comment below, just put the number 1 in the comment section. If you woke up one day and you just had enough of obesity and you knew you had to make a change in your life, like put a comment, number 1 in the comment section. And so what did you do when you woke up and you realized, like, I had enough? What was the next step?
Well, the next step, like I had done this a couple times beforehand, but this time was a lot different where I was like, I cannot go back. So I actually, at that time, I had a friend who enrolled me in my yoga teacher training. Talk about support. Holy shit. And so I did do my yoga teacher training right away. But the other thing I acknowledged is I had to get very real with who I was spending my time with. Because I knew that there were certain people that we had created a codependent relationship. So they were enabling me so that I could enable them to be in that same life choice. So it became a very lonely path, to be honest. I had to drop all of my friends. I had to stop hanging out with the majority of the people I knew and had grown up with. And I invested myself into growth.
That's exactly the same parallel that we deal with in obesity too. I always telling people to get rid of their negative friends and people to hang out with, and it's like your old favorites, right?
Yes.
We talked about this in a previous session, and you said something really enlightening, and I want to go back to it, which is it's a grieving process. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime we go through change, it is a massive grieving process, and we forget that point because we think of grief purely as like a loss of
like death usually.
Yeah, but we can grieve a job, we can grieve a part of our lives, we can grieve just even breakups of relationships. And it's really important to acknowledge that piece, because when we can acknowledge that we're going through that grieving process, that 7-stage cycle, we have a lot more patience for ourselves in understanding that we are choosing a new beginning, or we're allowing that part of ourselves to not necessarily die, but let go of it so that we can move forward with something different.
Oh, I say let him die. I say let that fat bitch die. I do. It got me into a lot of hate mongering from the weight loss surgery community when I said you have to let your old self die to become this new person. And when you said that last time, I was like, yes, we need to talk about this, because I think when people have weight loss surgery and decide to lose weight, they just focus on the weight, and you're exactly right. It is a grieving process. They have to let go of all of what they believe, because not what they believe, but what they know, because what they know is what got them fat. It's what got them fat. It's what got you addicted.
Absolutely.
And it's not what you think. It's what you know to be true, and that's hard to give up, right?
It is. It's like a whole life change, right? And people forget about that. It's like, my best analogy would be when like a reptile sheds its skin.
Yeah.
Right? So like we have to do that.
So I want to leave the viewers with one practical tip. Let's get them to start the grieving process so they can start healing. What's like one exercise they can do to start the grieving process?
Yeah, totally. So one of the aspects of the grieving process, and it's kind of funny, it sounds counterintuitive to a lot of things, but give yourself permission to feel your emotions. So, because the first 2 stages of the grief cycle, the first one is denial, right? Where we deny that we're in the grieving cycle, we made a change, but then we move into like the anger aspect.
In weight loss surgery, we call that buyer's remorse, or I call it buyer's remorse, where you go home, you go home from surgery and you're like, what the fuck did I just do to myself? Why? I can't believe I had to have weight loss surgery because I couldn't control my eating. So it's almost like I'm in denial. Like, I can't believe I went through this,
Yes, totally. Yeah. And I think like in the past, we used to be able to move through the grieving cycle a lot faster because we
Yeah.
actually had to sit and process our emotions and feel what we
Mm-hmm.
felt. But now we have access to like technology and internet, and we can kind of escape our emotions in a variety of ways. So one thing I always encourage people is like set aside, it can be 5 minutes. Like 5 minutes is my magic marker. Anybody can set aside 5 minutes and
Easy peasy.
just be still. No TV, no phone, no interruptions, and just feel how you feel. So you might notice when you stop that your shoulders are up here, and then you slowly,
Tense.
yeah. So you bring them down. But then also, once you feel your body, allowing yourself to know it's okay. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel frustration. It's okay to feel all of those emotions. That when you dissociate from that okay is when they become stuck.
I love that idea that it's okay to feel.
Yes. Because we've associated so many times like, oh, we need to feel this way. Or like people all the time, I ask me about like the joy coach. Like, oh, so you want me to feel joy all the time? And
No.
no, I'm like, the joy is allowing yourself to know it's okay to be human. It's okay to have emotions. And you need to feel all of them. Give yourself
I
permission.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that word permission. I feel that's a really powerful word. Like I give myself permission to be.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's tie that back in to body image. How do we get past, this false body image once we're disconnected from whether it's abuse or something else?
Yes. So it's bringing the mindfulness back. And I know mindfulness has become a really big thing in topic. But basically the best way to stimulate mindfulness is to bring your mind into your body. So it can be as simple as maybe there's an area in yoga, we call it neurosensory amnesia. And so there's parts of your body that you know is there, but you can't necessarily feel, or maybe you've disconnected from it and you can't move it as easily. So you can bring your hands. I say make like a fist, or you can even just press your fingers into that space, and then bring your mind into what it feels like to have that gentle pressure into your body. And then just take a few deep breaths, keeping your mind there, feeling the sensation that is arising with each breath that you take, so that you can notice if the movement changes, but mostly you're awakening your mind back to that point of your body, which then allows you to reconnect your mind and your body and re-stimulate that true body image.
So a lot of it, like a lot of my following had weight loss surgery, and they have a lot of loose skin that affects their body image. And we talked about cellular memory, and I've told them, I was like, you need to save money for plastic surgery to have your loose skin removed and blah blah blah. And a lot of them will fight me on that issue and say, no, I'm good. My husband doesn't mind it. I don't really mind it. But I think there's an issue there if there's cellular memory and you can become disconnected to it, right? Am I off
Definitely.
base?
No, for sure. Because if there's any kind of ill feelings, I'll say, or not wanting it to be there in some way, you disconnect from it naturally. Or it might be that like slight connection to the old self, right? Which might be holding on to like the anger or frustration or resentment. So definitely. And the biggest thing, like people ask me all the time with the yoga, like, because I'm a very natural person, but I also believe in doing what is good for you. So if you have that extra skin and it's not feeling good, or you're not feeling positive or supportive within
About it.
yourself, then do what you need to do in order to create that. But then again, creating that mindful connection back to that space of your body.
So that's a great point. What I want to do is wrap it up full 360. And how does a young, lovely lady like yourself, or want somebody watching this video, how do you avoid getting back into a bad relationship?
Well, the biggest thing is before anything, make sure that you know your own worth. So you establish your power. You really um, begin to develop a relationship with yourself more than anybody else, because our relationship with ourselves is that true foundation for how we create relationships with other people. But then also set yourself up to acknowledge who you'd be letting down if you went into an abusive relationship, because it's not just you that you'd be letting down, because no matter what, every single person does have a support network. They have people that love them, that care about them, that want to see them truly thrive and succeed. So make a list. Who would you be letting down if you went back into that space?
That's a great tip. Who would I be letting down?
Yeah. And sometimes we have to go outside of ourselves, right? Because we'll do more for other people than we will for ourselves.
That's right.
So, and
it could be your kids.
Yeah, your kids, your parents, your friends that truly are there to support you. Like for me, I lucked out because for me, I built such a very strong community of students. So it could even be people that you support through work or whatever. Like, and I will be completely honest, there's still moments I have cravings. There's still moments that I'm like, oh man, that would be so easy to go back there. But then instantly I go back into like, yeah, but then what? And how would this affect all of these other people? Is it really worth it?
Bring a conclusion to your personal story. Tell them where you are now in your life.
Yeah. So now I am totally clean. I facilitate yoga teacher trainings around the world, mostly in Canada, because I love Canada. And then I coach and I speak at different events around the world as well. I have an amazing relationship.
Yeah. You got married.
Yep. Got married, an amazing man. And I have two young boys. And very like loving, very nurturing family.
Was there a point in your life when you couldn't see this future for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. There was definitely a point where I couldn't see past what I was in.
High.
Yeah. Like that was the only focus was how can I get the next high? How many hours do I have until I can get it? And it was that constant play in my mind.
It's eerily similar to obesity, where I hear that a lot from patients where they say, I'm always thinking about my next meal. Like, what am I having for dinner? You know, how do I feed the kids? How do I make sure my husband doesn't see me eating?
Yes, totally.
It's weird.
Well, and I mean, addiction really is the same. It's just changes form depending on what substance is used.
Well, Megan, I thank you so much for your time. I think you've really blown my mind yet again. Gave us a lot of great tips. You want to tell the audience, we've been working on a project together behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know. It's so awesome.
Yeah, it's so awesome. You ready to announce what we've been doing?
Yes. So it's an 8-week joyful self-connection. So 8 weeks of reconnecting to your body, creating confidence, creating a positive body image, and really feeling good in your skin.
So an online course, we've been working on an online course.
Yes.
Where you're helping them reconnect to their body and body image. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yep, I've seen the first few videos. They're really fantastic, and I can't tell you guys enough. If you're watching this, if you're interested in getting the special deal when we release it, we're hoping to have it ready in about 3 to 4 weeks. Just put a yes in the comment section, and we'll make sure that you don't miss out on the offer when we release it. I think the offer is, I'm trying to talk Megan into a consultation call with y'all too if you sign up.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Because I think an online course is fun, but people need a little bit of FaceTime, like Facebook Live, FaceTime, or Zoom call, or really get that connection. What do you think?
I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah. So I'm super excited working on that with you. Put a yes in the comment section if you'd be interested in signing up for that online course when it launches. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, Megan. We're going to wrap up our series here in the next couple of weeks. Sound good?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. V.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you for your time.
All right, guys. How was that? That was an amazing talk. I was a little bit nervous asking Megan to share her personal story with you guys, but I really thought it was important that you guys hear her personal background, because it's important that you know she's just not lecturing at you, that she's not just some skinny, pretty face that you gotta hate on, you know? Um, this problem shows up in many forms in many bodies, yes? It could be the skinny cheerleader who gets abused. It could be the heavy girl who gets abused. It could be the drug addict who gets abused. It could be the soccer mom who looks like a Barbie doll, who everyone on the outside thinks has a great, incredible life and loving marriage, and she's living this personal hell. It reminds me of that Julia Roberts movie from the 80s where she was in an abusive relationship and she had to escape. I can't remember what it was called. Someone could tell me. But you know, I like these lunch and learns. I hope you're liking the lunch and learns, because the whole point is to try and capture and fill the gap of the psychological, emotional aspect of weight loss surgery. And you guys need experts other than myself. So comment for me if you're loving these lunch and learns, if you get a lot of use from them, because I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys what you need to hear. So this month we've been sleeping with the enemy. Yes, Royal G, that's totally right. Sleeping with the enemy. And what I want to make sure is I'm filling the gaps for you guys. I've got some other people lined up. Sherelle Morse might be doing a project with me. I've got an amazing speaker. You're going to talk about gratitude. We're going to do a series on gratitude. But, you know, I think this stuff is interesting. Now, you might or might not. So I want to give you the content that you want to hear. Sleeping with enemy, that's it. So let me know if this is fulfilling that psychological, emotional need. If you find value in these lunch and learns, please share the broadcast for me. Please post it into your Facebook groups, your secret groups. You know, I'm around 62,000 fans on Facebook, but I don't know why I don't have a million. I'm egotistical enough to think I should have 1 million followers on Facebook, 1 million followers on YouTube, 1 million followers on Instagram, but I don't. And I need your help. If we really want to take this up to another level, weight loss surgery, if we really want to conquer obesity, we really have to do our parts, you know, we really have to share.
Hi, Dr. Vuong here. If you loved that video, I hope you will check out velocity2020.com. I want to meet you in person. This is my big annual conference in Vegas. It's amazing. It's not just about weight loss surgery, but it's about taking your life up to the next level. You're going to meet the best people, the best speakers, the best audience possible. You're going to really take your life up to the next level. 2020 is all about vision, clarity, and focus. We're going to show you how to find your vision, what you really want to do with your life, get crystal clear, clarity, and then find your laser focus to do what you need to do to have the amazing life that you deserve. Hope to see you there.